Alrighty, guys, your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man continues to surprise me. We are going to be talking about episodes 6, 7, and 8 in full spoilery detail. So if you guys have not seen your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, and there have been 8 episodes now, and I think there are only going to be 2 more, 9 and 10, before the end of this first season, which this series has been renewed already for 2 more seasons, which is, I think that's great news. And I'm not going to bury the lead, guys. I've really been enjoying the series, and I really enjoyed these 3 episodes, so I think I can finally say, before we get into the full spoiler discussion, I can say it now. Guys, if you haven't been watching this series, I would really encourage you to go check it out. I know it's not something that a lot of us were excited for beforehand. I mean, you can go check out my reaction to the trailer. I still think the trailer itself was not the greatest thing, but this series has really surprised me. So, before we get into all the spoilery detail, make sure to go check out the series and then come back and you can hear my spoilery thoughts about these 3 episodes. And you can go check out my spoilery thoughts on the previous 5 episodes in previous episodes of the Access Blockbusters Pod, as well as in those individual segments on the channel. Okay, all of that out of the way. Let's talk about these 3 episodes. So, again, I mean, just to recap quickly, I went into the show with 0 expectations. I thought the trailer was just not great. I was like, what are we doing here? Why are we making a show like this when it's, we've already gotten our amazing MCU Spider-Man. We already have, the Beyond the Spider-Verse, Across the Spider-Verse, Into the Spider-Verse films. And look, I'm, the first one to admit here, I'm not the number one fan of those films. Not to say I don't like it. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just not saying that I'm saying that I'm not one of those people who think that those films, Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse are the best Spider-Man films ever made. I know that a lot of people do, but I am not one of them. But I do really enjoy them. And it's just weird. It felt weird to me. I was like, why are we doing this? But I watched the first 2 episodes. And again, I go into anything I watch, no matter how low my expectations are, with an open mind. And I thought, wow, this is really surprising. This is really good. And episodes 3, 4, and 5 continue that. Some great, great character work we're doing here with Lonnie, with Peter, Nico, Harry, and it all continues in these 3 episodes. So I took some notes, not as heavy notes as I usually do with some of the other shows like, Penguin or June Prophecy or Agatha All Along, but, just some preliminary notes here to talk about and just to get the conversation going. So we'll go through episode by episode and then I'll kind of wrap it up here. Episode 6, well, if the title didn't give it away, because I think it's something about the devil, it's the Daredevil episode. And yeah, not to bury the lead here again, but Daredevil is awesome in this episode. But we'll get there in just a second. So first of all, we start out here with Pearl again, and she doesn't know, and she's just really trying to figure out what's going on here, because I think one of the greatest things this show has done, although I will say it's starting to spin its wheels a little bit, I think, with Lonnie, because I think the show thus far, the biggest surprise in a pleasant way to me has been the character development of Lonnie. And it's just not a character that I was familiar with. I didn't even really know Tombstone other than the name vaguely. And to have all this character development for Lonnie Lincoln is just a great thing. And so I feel really bad for Pearl, because at the beginning of this episode, she doesn't know what's going on. I will say, by the time we get to the end of episode 6, because I know, we're heading towards some big confrontation, I'm sure, between Peter and Lonnie and probably Scorpion and whatnot. So I'm sure we'll get some more stuff there. But I think at the end of these 3 episodes, that arc is starting to spin its wheels a little bit, but I'm sure it's just kind of stalling until we get to the actual conclusion here. And then poor Peter also trying to do good by Nico, and that relationship, Nico, Peter, Harry, starts to develop a little bit more in interesting ways, right? Those the individual relationships between those 3 characters on their own, and then of course all 3 of them together. I think it's really interesting. He's just trying to help, or he's trying to make good. He's trying to be a good person, as is his nature. The Spider-Man Peter Parker character. But he's trying to make Nico and Harry like each other, be friends, and it's not working out. It's really awkward, between Nico and Harry at the beginning. Then we get to this kind of charity event about Lagos, which is what happened in Captain America Civil War with the Scarlet Witch and Thunderbolt Ross. Look, I mean, this is a week for Thunderbolt Ross, right? Because Thunderbolt Ross is obviously showing up in Captain America Brave New World very prominently, played by Harrison Ford, but we have another version of Thunderbolt Ross in the multiverse, and here he is. He's just showing up here. And Norman Osborn, using Spider-Man to kind of make underhanded government deals with Thunderbolt Ross is a very shady Norman Osborn kind of thing here. Norman Osborn also just continuing not to treat his son well, calling Harry to get to Peter and check out the security thing that's going on in Oscorp, which of course we knew was Daredevil. The second he said that, or the second we saw the security camera, I was like, yep, that's Daredevil. But yeah, I think the development of that relationship between Norman and Harry is going to continue. And I'm sure Norman's going to die at some point, and Harry's going to take up the mantle of Green Goblin. It's going to be sad in one of the next 2 seasons. But yeah, I think that is something else to monitor as well. But Daredevil, guys, Daredevil shows up and they play the theme music from the Daredevil show. I love when they do that, honestly. It's kind of cheesy, but, when Charles Xavier shows up in Multiverse of Madness or Ms. Marvel is revealed to be a mutant and they kind of play the X-Men 97 theme, or even, the little thing where Daredevil's like, hey, I'm Daredevil in She-Hulk. By the way, apologies for the sirens in the background. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, he's like, I'm Daredevil, and they play the little hit from the theme. I think it's fun, and so I love how they're playing the music, the theme music, and the fight scene. The second this scene just started at all, because again, I think one of the things that this show does really well is that this version of Spider-Man Peter Parker is very adjacent to the Tom Holland version. Hudson Thames, I think, is doing a very good job of approximating Peter Parker, while also making this role his own, right, and fitting into this show. And based on that, I'm now dying to see Daredevil and Tom Holland's Peter Parker meet up at some point. I really am. I don't know what's going to happen with Spider-Man 4, but man, this scene sold me. Like the first 5 seconds of their interaction alone. And the action scene is shot so well, and it's clear that they paid so much attention to this and they really wanted to get it right, and they did. And then, Norman Osborn blaming Daredevil, right, by saying he was working with Octavius. Yeah, that's shady. We'll get more into Norman's shadiness in episode 7, and then Nico finds out, and we get a Scorpion, and that is episode 6. Episode 7, moving on here. Also, the other thing, I guess the one thing I noticed heading into episode 7 is I generally, for most shows, except for Friends, skip the intros, because I just, I'm like, yeah, let's get a move on. 30 seconds, let's move on here. And especially the previously ons, I skip them. But, when you skip the intros, right, it usually ends on the very end of the intro. And for Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, they always end on this kind of comic book cover panel, right, of what the episode is going to be about. And I realized that's really what the appeal of this show is. Because people have been like, oh, what's the point of this show? Like, even if you like it, why are we doing this show when you have, a movie like Into the Spider-Verse or Across the Spider-Verse? But for me, I think there's a distinct difference here between what these two things are trying to accomplish. Even though, yes, superficially, they're both animated Spider-Man properties, media, television, movies. I think what this show is trying to accomplish is it's almost like the experience of reading a comic book. They have the entire rogues gallery of Spider-Man. We get Chameleon later on as well, Rhino. Dr. Connors is there, Dr. Octopus, Green Goblin, Scorpion, we're just waiting. We got kind of a Venom creature, I guess, at the very beginning, but I'm sure we'll get Venom later on as well. So I think that it's the experience of reading a comic book, but brought to life, and I really, really like that as well. So anyways, we get now some more backstory, I guess, about Otto, and I guess he's trying to harness gamma radiation, and then we get some scenes here with Harry and Nico bonding. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, probably of the 7 episodes or the 8 episodes thus far, I think the Nico Harry racing stuff was probably my least favorite part of the show. It's fine. I think the development of their relationship together as friends is interesting enough, but it wasn't, I think some of those scenes where, especially the racing scene where they were just racing against that random woman, I was like, yeah, I don't know. It wasn't my favorite stuff here. But what was really good was the end fight with Peter, Spider-Man, and Scorpion. So obviously now Pearl knows everything, and the Scorpion action is very cool. And Norman clearly does not care about Peter in this scenario. And yeah, he gets really, he gets beat, and it's very much similar to what happens to the MCU Peter Parker on the New York ferry, Staten Island ferry, and Norman's like, yep, just trying to find Otto, and he gets stabbed. And so, when Peter cries out for help, and when Norman, it shows that Norman's gone from the command center, I was like, oh, okay, is the Green Goblin actually showing up? Because look, one of the things that has been kind of up in the air so far in the series is really what Norman Osborn's character development and motivation is. Is he true insane goblin at this point, or is he more just kind of, evil businessman, or what is he? What's the deal here? And I think this show, at least this scene, because he has the glider, so we see the glider, but we don't see Green Goblin. So it makes me wonder. I still think, I lean to the side of he's not full Goblin yet, but probably by the end of the series he will go full Goblin, and so we'll see about that. Episode 8 then. So poor Peter, now he just wants to do good. The Peter and May scene, it's very similar to when Peter comes home from having failed on the ferry. It's very sad. It's a very sweet scene between the two of them. And then Doc Ock, I love the Doc Ock, escape scene where he's just kind of strutting around with the jazzy music kind of playing in the background while he wrecks shop. And then Iron Man shows up. That was unexpected. It was also kind of unnecessary. I don't know what the point of that was, but Iron Man shows up, so that's cool. Iron Man. And then Peter and Pearl start getting close, and Peter tries to convince Lonnie, let's not do this, right? But Lonnie, of course, doesn't listen. Peter tries, and so then, then we have this talk between Peter and Norman, and just when you think Norman is kind of on the good side here, he gives this line, "With great power," and I was like, oh, okay. So we got Norman Osborn saying it, and he says, "Comes great respect," and all of a sudden you're like, it's a twisted version of everything going on there. So you kind of get what's going on with that. We also get a quick shot of Chameleon. Okay, random. And then, Chameleon, I guess not random, because Chameleon was one of those guys on the truck earlier who had, was using that Octavius tech. And the episode ends with, Harry making Peter his classic suit, and we are off to the races. So guys, the finale, last 2 episodes are coming up. I've really enjoyed this show. I'm very excited it's coming back for another 2 seasons because it's been a big surprise to me, and I'm very enthusiastic. I'm very hopeful that this series can continue to really explore parts of Spider-Man that the MCU just doesn't have time for. Because look, if the MCU wanted to have all these different villains in one Spider-Man film, it would just be way, way too much. And Spider-Man is definitely not getting a TV show. We're not doing a Tom Holland Spider-Man TV show just because the character is too big. So this is perfect for me, honestly, as an MCU and a Spider-Man fan. Guys, what did you think of episodes 6 through 8 of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man? Are you still enjoying the show, or maybe it's tailing off for you? Let me know in the comments down below.